And if it's okay with Tonya, I will also start broadcasting this to our Facebook Live on our channel, which will take me hopefully not very long. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for this important conversation about how the need for childcare is a risk for family homelessness. We're really lucky to have Tonya Jones from the Utah's Department of Workforce Services here to help us talk through this at a practical level. This is the first in a series of 3 conversations about factors that contribute to family homelessness, because I think for the Coalition of Religious Communities, which is the group that's hosting this event, we've been talking about family homelessness for about 5 years now. We've been organizing a diaper drive for kids experiencing homelessness every year. And this year, I think we realized that we need to help people understand the factors that contribute to family homelessness, so that people can talk more effectively with policymakers about those factors. We organize Faith Days at the Hill, and our hope is that these events will help people to understand the factors. So that if somebody asks you, well, I feel bad for homeless kids, but what's the matter with their parents? They have answers. And so I'm hoping when this is over, that's what people leave with. Before going into the presentation, I wanted to first talk about just a few facts about family homelessness. Infancy is the age when a person is most likely to be homeless in the United States. 1 million children in the United States have a parent between the age of 18 and 25 who experienced homelessness during the past year. 43% of homeless young women between the ages of 18 and 25 are pregnant or parenting. Mothers who've experienced homelessness are less likely to have access to subsidized childcare than those at risk of homelessness or those with stable housing. And so this, I think, it's really important. When we're talking about family homelessness, about family homelessness for families with kids, that we look at childcare, because as a parent, you can't go to work if you don't have a safe place for your kids to be. If you want to stay a parent, if you don't want to take your children away, you can't just leave a 2-year-old in the apartment. And so, people, and then when you look at the cost of childcare, for an infant, recent report said that it would cost $11,232 per year to provide childcare. That's a huge share of income for a family earning $35,000 a year, especially with rents being as high as they are. And so to help focus this conversation and make it a little less abstract and focused on facts like the ones I've just been spewing out, I thought we could come up with 2 families that became homeless, 2 hypothetical families that became homeless based on other situations other families have, and give somebody who understands how these families are connected with childcare. And I should say, there are families every year who, one of the big ways we help families get out of homelessness is by connecting them with childcare. This is a big part of the solution, but the 2 hypothetical families we were going to talk about are, the first one is a family headed by a 25-year-old single mother who was separated from her husband when he was arrested for domestic violence. Her 2 children are aged 3 and 5. She has been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and depression. She also has a back condition that makes her unable to lift more than 30 pounds. Her family became homeless after she lost her job because her employer felt she was taking too many days off from work to take care of sick children. The second hypothetical family is headed by a 23-year-old single father with one 2-year-old child. He became homeless for the first time when he was 12 with his mother. He entered the foster care system when he was 16, but unfortunately left foster care without completing high school. He learned he was a parent when he was 21 years old and managed to make monthly childcare payments of $300 while living in an apartment he shared with 2 co-workers from his job in retail. His daughter was placed in his custody when his mother was incarcerated. They became homeless shortly thereafter. I think in this series of 3 webinars, we'll be looking at different factors that lead to these families, how these families becoming homeless, but we will also be looking at it from different perspectives. So next month we'll be looking at housing costs. The month after that, we'll be looking at disability status as a factor in all of this. But this month we are focusing on the role childcare plays in all of this. And so I want to thank our guest, who is a much better expert on childcare assistance in Utah, to sort of talk through those 2 hypotheticals and how this would impact, or what. And I mean, is it okay if you could talk about, are there other services that DWS could connect these 2 parents with also? Because I want the people on this call, I think part of what we need to do is to tell the story about what we're doing right. And so I'll turn the time over to Tanya Jones.
Thanks everyone for having me today. I'm happy to be here and representing the department to talk to you about a significant need for families, both homeless and not homeless, which is childcare support, right? And Bill did a great job outlining why that's important for families and how it impacts their ability to hold jobs, which impacts their ability to maintain housing. So maybe I'll just tackle each of these scenarios, maybe one at a time. Bill, does that sound all right with you?
Yeah, I think it'll be a lot easier to talk about one scenario at a time.
Okay, and like you already said, it will be really hard for me to talk about just childcare support when there are so many other services that can help these families, because we all know, working in this community with the people who are experiencing homelessness and not, these are scenarios that we come across every day. So again, thank you for the opportunity to talk about them. This first single mother, 25-year-old, I don't know if you guys have seen these in writing, but just to remind you, 25-year-old, 2 small children, recently in a domestic violence situation, has some mental health and some physical health issues preventing her from being able to work, and has recently lost her job because her children are sick and she lacks childcare. So in terms of services that we could provide for her, we have a plethora. The first support I think of for her is our family employment program. For those of you who are not familiar with that, that's a financial aid program that is focused on single parent families, or families who have a parent who is disabled and unable to work. And the reason that program makes a lot of sense to me for this customer is because we can provide all kinds of wraparound services. Childcare tied directly to the family employment program does not have employment hour requirements. We can provide supportive childcare for any activity that this customer has negotiated with their employment counselor that makes sense for them to improve their situation. So if a customer is attached to the family employment program, they can get childcare for mental health appointments, they can get childcare for physical health appointments, they can get childcare to meet with their housing case manager. Their employment plan should be developed in a way that starts where they're at and moves through whatever steps or goals that they need to follow to resolve their situation, and which is hopefully at some point to become employed and become housed, right? We need these kids to be housed. And so for this mom who's not working and has these children, has these barriers that she needs to focus on, the family employment program and family employment program childcare would be a really good option for her. Like I said, it's one step at a time. We can work with her to resolve the issues. We can collaborate and partner with housing resources to help connect her to whatever resources are available in the community to help resolve this housing need and childcare need. We also really work closely with parents to identify backup childcare. So like in this situation, I don't know if she initially had childcare and then her kids are sick, so she's, had to pull them out of childcare, so she didn't have a job. We work with planning and try and connect people with more than one option for childcare so that if something like this happens, they don't lose their job. The Family Employment Program also provides skill enhancement opportunities, employment, job search related support. Like I said, a complete, many resources and planning opportunities and wraparound services to help a mom in this situation resolve her issues in a way that makes sense for her, and we can provide childcare for any of those things she's active in. It also doesn't have to be full-time childcare. It can be part-time childcare, and just do what makes sense for her. Do I have questions? Should we open it up for questions now as we go, Bill, or do you want to do it at the end? What are your thoughts?
Whichever is more comfortable for you.
I'm good either way, so whatever the group wants, and I'll try and pay attention to the chat as well. So do we have any questions right now?
Raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question.
Okay, I will talk about the other scenario. So the other scenario is a single father, a 2-year-old child, young man, has a history of being in the foster care system himself, lacks a high school diploma. It sounds like until the time he got custody of his child, he was living with some friends and able to pay his child support payments. So he's working in retail, so a job that probably doesn't pay as well, but he was able to meet his expenses, and then got his child and ended up homeless because he was living with friends. And so, there's so much here. I think single fathers in general are less likely to ask for help. I think we have a challenge, not a challenge, but something to be aware of there, right? So, there's the same services are available for single fathers as single mothers. So if he were to lose his job, this young man is working, but if he were to lose his job, the FEP program, the Family Employment Program, that's available for single dads as well, and offers all the same support. But this young man is employed. I don't know how many hours he's employed. But the most appropriate childcare resource for him would be what's called our employment support childcare. Employment support childcare is for families that are employed at least 15 hours a week, making minimum wage. So as long as they're working 15 hours or more a week and meet the income guidelines, that is a childcare resource available to them. If they're working less than full time, but more than 15 hours. And for example, they would like to do some training to improve their skill sets. Our WIOA programs, Workforce Investment Opportunity Act, education and training programs are a really good resource for this young man. And as long as he maintained that 15 hours of employment, we could help him with some skill building or training and pay for childcare for that as well, up to 40 hours a week. So that's an opportunity for him. So I really want to push those WIOA programs for folks that are underemployed, and we could help them with this high school diploma as well. And then there's another childcare resource available that doesn't match either one of these scenarios. and that's called Kids in Care, and that is administered by the Children's Service Society. But you can find that information on our website, jobs.utah.gov. If you just search for, care about childcare, information about that program is available and how to apply there. And it's for job search. So they can get up to 150 hours of like drop-in childcare to help when they're out job searching if they're not eligible for either of these other programs.
Okay, so now we do have a couple of questions in chat. I don't know if anybody wants to raise their hand to ask it themselves. Audrey Mancini asked a question. I mean, I think it's how does FAP help families, the Family Employment Program help parents during the period that they're applying for SSI or SSDI? Is that what you're asking, Audrey? Is
that the question?
Yeah, I think.
So childcare would be tied to the activities in the employment plan. So if a customer is applying for Social Security and obviously we're also going to be working with them to focus on whatever treatment is required for their condition, right? So they'll have mental health appointments, they'll have maybe doctor's appointments, and they'll have appointments with Social Security. We can absolutely develop a plan and pay childcare so that customers are able to attend those appointments for their wellness and to secure that Social Security. If there are any other activities that might be appropriate for those customers, because just because you're applying for Social Security doesn't mean you can't be, doesn't always mean that you can't be involved in other activities. If those activities make sense, we could cover childcare for that.
Okay. There's a question about, there's a couple of good questions. One is there a time limit for Family Employment Program? And then which is a question from, and then there's another question about are parents between the ages of 18 and 25 who are in foster care eligible for additional benefits?
So yes, the Family Employment Program is time limited. Utah limits their assistance to 36 months in a lifetime limit unless you meet extension criteria. And there's several criteria in which a family can extend their benefits beyond the 36 months. So that's kind of a yes and no answer.
How do extensions work? Is it on a month-to-month basis, so they get a new extension every month?
Typically, they're at a month-to-month. It depends on the extension criteria and what documentation supports the extension. That gets really technical, but it requires a case staffing between all the parties: the employment counselor, the customer supervisor, and whatever other supports. We have licensed clinical therapists on site that participate in that to make sure that we're offering all the supports necessary. And then we typically it's a month-to-month basis. Yeah.
Okay. And do you know if there's benefit, if there's other benefits for parents or for people who've aged out of foster care?
Not related to childcare that I'm aware of.
Okay.
So we are WIOA programs. We have WIOA programs focused on that population. So those are career and education programs that we can help with that, but not childcare specifically. Yeah, they would have to fall under the other guidelines.
Okay. Does anyone else have other questions about what we've heard so far? So I think it's important to note that this is a program that serves a lot of families that are, I think last year there was over 6,300 households that received child care assistance in Utah. Is that right?
Yeah, just in January there were 6,728 households, 23,000, almost 24,000 children that received a child care assistance from DWS.
That's wow. That's I mean, I think when you look at the cost of childcare, I think I asked Rebecca Banner, who also works at the Department of Workforce Services, from data about how many families that were participating in this program were homeless. And what she said is it was, they didn't, I didn't give her enough notice for her to get the exact details on that, but what she was able to say is that I think 500, I'm not going to remember the exact number. It was over 500, but less than 600 families that were homeless with kids applied for childcare services. She didn't know how many were approved. I know that when we looked at this a couple of years ago, it was something like 98%. And so I think it's really important to realize, I mean, that there are a lot of families who getting childcare assistance is part of how they move out of homelessness. I believe there's a under federal regulations, there's a requirement that there's a preference for families coming out of homelessness, or a priority, not a preference, a priority. It's also important to note that in addition to the child care assistance program that is run by the state, there's also the Head Start program in Salt Lake County. The Head Start agency, well, the Head Start agency for Salt Lake and Tooele County provided early education services to 2,390 children in 2020, which, I mean, that was the peak pandemic year. So, I mean, and so they were doing some of that online. I'm sure that was a challenge for everyone. But I think it's, okay. I just think it's really important to realize, I mean, in terms of families moving out of homelessness, programs like this really make it possible. And I think with Head Start, they have partnerships with the shelter to prioritize kids. And that one has, what's nice about Head Start is that it doesn't have as strong participation requirements. And so if you're a family that's just trying to get into housing and get work, you don't have to worry about reporting to the state. And so I think, I mean, it makes sense that that's a popular option. I also think it's really important. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, all of these families who are receiving this child care benefit, they're low-income families. This is an income-limited program. And so if they weren't getting the child care assistance, they would be at a much higher risk of becoming homeless. I mean, I think that the national data shows that families coming out of the families who become homeless have a lower utilization rate for this type of child care assistance. And so, like, not having child care assistance is a risk factor for becoming homeless for families that are on the edge, like the hypotheticals we talked about. Let's see. There's a program for early childhood degree scholarships. Is that that's a question that came from Dion Corkins. I don't know if you know about it. Do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that by that name.
Okay.
I could ask though and forward information if I have it.
Okay. How do there's another question about how these childcare services availability for mixed income status, mixed immigration status households.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
No, I will let you talk.
I was just going to say, okay, so I have to tell you that sub childcare is not where I am housed. And so I do know there was a recent policy change or an upcoming policy change related to this, and I don't want to misspeak on this. So to answer that question, what I'd like to do is follow up with Bill, and maybe he could forward the correct information out to everybody so that I don't give you wrong information tied to this this recent change about how we serve children of undocumented parents. citizenship of undocumented parents. I want to make sure I get you the correct information. So would that work?
Yeah, I saw the rule change too, but I wouldn't want to speak to it because it's been long enough that I don't want to get it wrong.
Yeah, but I'll get you some information.
Woodruff is raising her hand, so I want to give her a chance to ask her. She lowered her hand. She raised it again.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I was just going to ask, since the programs we heard about from the state are tied to like employment programs, what about, say, grandparent-headed families who have custody of grandchildren, but the grandparents are at or nearing retirement age? Is there assistance for them if they were to need it?
There is. So the family employment program and the family employment program, the employment element of the family employment program is our end goal, right? We want to help families become employed. There's lots of activities that they can be in prior to being employed that help them along that continuum. I just always want to make that really clear to folks because I think sometimes people don't access or apply for those benefits because of that. So I want to make that clear. But yes, if grandparents are not receiving like a subsidy from the foster care system or DCFS, they can also apply for the family employment program, and they can choose to be in on the grant or not in on the grant. If they are in on the grant, then they have to participate as any other parent on the program, and participate means activities anywhere along the continuum that we already talked about. Leading towards employment. If they're not on the grant, they can get a child-only grant for their grandchildren. They do have to do what's called duty of support against the absent parent, which means Office of Recovery Services will try and collect child support from the biological parents, not the grandparents. So that, I mean, there is assistance available. It's just slightly different.
Thank you.
Welcome. Phil, you're on mute.
Okay, have I been on mute the whole time? Okay, well, I'm really, so there was a comment there was this, I was on mute for a long time, sorry. There was a comment about Utah Community Action having a program to help parents get be certified to work in the child care sector. I think that is one of the things that's worth talking about is a benefit of the Head Start program is that they have other adult education programs in addition that they do in-house through Utah Community Action. So they, if a parent doesn't have a GED, which national data says something like 50% of homeless parents do not have a GED, they don't have a high school degree or equivalent. The fact that they have a GED prep program before in-house is a really nice benefit of the Head Start program. The FEP program is the Family Employment Program, which is the state name for Utah's temporary aid to needy families, TANF, or a TANF program. And so you'll hear people talk about FAP and TANF. TANF is the federal name, FAP is the state name, it's the same program. The CDA is an acronym that I am not, is a childcare, childhood development. It's a training program for working within a Head Start, basically. I mean, they were having staffing problems, and they said, let's train our parents to work with us, which is kind of a fun way to solve that problem. And somebody remembered the acronym, so thank you. What else did we? I think one thing that I would like to raise with you, and you're not going to be able to answer this, but if you could, and actually we'll raise it separately, but I know that in some other federal programs, the funding normally for those programs comes through the state, but there are sometimes opportunities for local government to pay into those programs. And I was wondering, I mean, if there were a way that we wanted childcare assistance to be expanded in a specific county, could a county like Salt Lake contract with the state so that there's federal matching funds, they paid the state match to expand it in the county, because that's possible with other programs, and that would be when you look at the role childcare can play in terms of helping families avoid homelessness, helping families move out of homelessness. That would be one avenue for improving access, at least in a part of the state. That's a really high level technical question, and I'm not going to ask you to answer, but that was a thought I had this morning as I was preparing for this. Does anybody, are there any other questions from the audience or from?
There was a question in the chat that just asked how you can refer people for assistance. And I'm so glad you asked that, because I think having understanding of how easy that can be, or how you can help someone do that, is so important, because we need more people to access our programs. We want people to access our programs. We want to help folks with not only the programs we talked about, but SNAP and Medicaid are also administered through Department of Workforce Services. So people can apply electronically on jobs.utah.gov, or they can come into any center, any employment center, and there's employment centers all across the state, and they'll get served and they'll get asked additional questions, and hopefully those questions will lead to having them apply for any benefits that they might appear to be eligible for. So jobs.utah.gov, you can find access and information about all of our programs. It's pretty user-friendly, and yeah, please encourage your folks to connect with us, because we have a lot of resources and a lot of ways to help.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a combined application, so you can apply simultaneously for Medicaid, childcare, SNAP, which is what food stamps has been renamed. I mean, and the cash assistance. Are the job training programs, or do those have a separate application?
They are a separate application. People can just search for career and education, and there's a page for that, and it's a simple application, and it's really easy access. We just need people to know about it. We need people to connect, because like I said, we have so many wraparound services and supports we can offer, that just getting people to us is the first step.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's looking at the data that I got from Rebecca Banner this morning. I mean, I think there were, I'll say 572. It was 500. It was around that number. Families that were at a shelter in Utah that applied for childcare assistance, and you wonder how many of those families wouldn't have ended up at the shelter if they weren't having to pay such a large share of their income toward childcare. I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, what do you do when you're paying half your income to rent, 30% toward childcare, and you're not? I mean, you have to access. You really have to, if you're not accessing benefits like these, programs like these, you're just going to always be behind, and you're always going to be right there on the edge. So you get sick for a week and you're homeless with your kids. I mean, that's, or your kid gets sick and you can't go to work. I mean, it's, and I think, I mean, that's why we're doing this series, is because we wanted to make it clear that, you know, like, it's not, families don't become homeless because parents are bad. Families become homeless because parents choose to stay with their sick kid instead of go to work. Because parents choose to stay with their 2-year-old when they don't have a childcare arrangement for that child. Parents, you know, it's not, these aren't bad people. These are people having to make impossible decisions. They can't be in 2 places at once. And so, you know, it's really important for people who care about homeless families to understand where the real dilemmas that these families face, that these parents face, and also to understand what resources are available to help them move beyond that. Because I think it really is amazing. I mean, if right now, I mean, with the continuing CARES Act funding that we have, there are more job training resources available in the state than there really ever have been before. With the 2% unemployment rate, there are more employers willing to take time to take a chance on somebody they wouldn't normally hire. And so we really are in a time when a family that's on the edge of homelessness, if they access all the resources that we talked about today, they could move several notches up on the ladder and be in a much more stable position. And I think that's, I mean, in a much more long-term way. And so, you know, there are times when the economy is really bad, that 3-year time limit for the family employment program is a real problem. But right now, if you got access some of the job training resources, and took advantages of the different things that are available, it really is possible for families to move to a position where they're much less at risk of becoming homeless. And I think was this helpful for, I mean, I guess the question I want to end with, well, actually, I won't end exactly, but the last question I'd like to ask the audience was this helpful for you in terms of understanding why families with kids become homeless? Has this helped you to better, if you were to talk to your state legislator about the need for housing for families who are at risk of becoming homeless, would knowing what we talked about today, would that make it easier for you to do that? Okay. Well, people are, if you can, well, okay. Well, so people are responding. Let me talk about the plan for the next 2 of these, because this is the first in a series of 3. The next one is going to be on June 8th, and it's going to look at housing. I think that you know, I think people, there are housing assistance programs. The reason that but they're right now, they're, given how tight the rental market is, there are families who have housing vouchers, who have housing assistance, who are having trouble finding a way to use those things. And so we're hoping to educate, you know, the people in the coalition of religious communities, our community partners, about how important it is that funding specifically for housing that's appropriate for families is increased at the state level, at the local level. I think right now, even when you look at a lot of the low-income housing that's being built, because it's cheaper to build studio apartments and small micro units and other things like that, there's a lot of the new affordable housing is not big enough for a family with kids. And so, you know, I think one of the things that we'll be looking at next month is whether there should be a dedicated source of funding just for families with kids at the state or county or whatever level, because I think we need more 2- and 3-bedroom apartments that families can afford. So that will be the conversation next month. And we'll be looking at it through the lens of the same 2 hypothetical families we talked about today. The month after that, we will have, and I should say, I mean, our guest next month will be Zach. Why am I can see his face. Can't remember his last name because but anyway, he's someone from Utah Housing, or from Housing Connect, which is the Salt Lake County Housing Authority, and also somebody from the State Office of Rehabilitation Services. And no, that's the next month. Okay, so next month it's somebody from the County Housing Authority and someone from the Department of Workforce Services Housing Division talking about how housing is a factor, the housing costs are a factor in families becoming homeless. I mean, again, if you're paying half your income on rent or 60% of your income on rent, it's pretty easy to get behind. The last month we'll be talking about disability status and homelessness, and actually it's kind of great. We have an attorney who works on appeals for SSI cases from Utah Legal Services coming to help with that conversation. We also have someone from the Office of Rehabilitation Services who will be talking about state services to help people with disabling conditions to get into the workforce or to get back into the workforce. And so I think I'm hopeful that after these 3 conversations, we'll all be able to talk about how families become homeless in a lot more concrete and direct way. So thank you, everyone, especially Tonya, because I couldn't have, I know some of what you said, I didn't know a lot of what you said, and it was really educational for me. Thank you. All right, well, we will, then I'm going to end this. We will, I'll hopefully see all of you next month.